Hello again, everyone, and welcome back. My guest today is Farsheed Fersowsi, who is a native of Tehran, Iran. You came to this country in 1973. Today, you're the CEO of a brand new business, Innova Payroll. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But Farsheed, first of all, welcome to the Lipscomb campus.
Thank you for having me.
We're delighted to have you. Let me take you back to 1973 when you came to this country. Tell me how you did that.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran, and I did my high school education back in Iran. And when I turned 18, my father sent me. I was the youngest of 5 children. My father sent me, just like he had done with my siblings, to the West for my higher education. And I came to the United States following in the footsteps of my older brothers, and started at Kansas University in Lawrence, Kansas for my freshman year. Then I transferred to Vanderbilt sophomore year, and I continued my education at Vanderbilt. Then graduated from Vanderbilt as a civil engineer in 1977. Then went to UC Berkeley for a master's degree in structural engineering. Finished that in 78, came back to Vanderbilt, started working on a doctorate, which I never finished. And I taught some courses at Vanderbilt. And then in 1979, as the political situation in Iran was beginning to become very unstable, and the now very well-known Iranian revolution took place, I interrupted my education to basically get married and also start a business. So I basically went straight from my education into entrepreneurship without ever having worked in a company.
Now, I'm very intrigued, Farsheed, by your transition from engineering to business. I think that's an interesting transition. Not everyone thinks of engineering as the appropriate preparation for a business career, but you've obviously had an outstanding business career. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But tell me about how you view engineering as preparation for a business career.
I think there are many paths to a business career. Of course, finance, accounting, those are the obvious business. Those are the obvious paths. But I believe engineering is an excellent foundation and platform for the business world, because in engineering, first of all, you're trained into structured thinking and trained into problem solving. And also, you're trained and your skills are honed in abstract thinking, and also recognizing, using numerical analysis and numerical modeling to understand the dynamics of a physical entity, which is very similar, and there's a great deal of parallel between that and any business, because all businesses are basically can be understood in the form of financial models. And doing the transition, making the transition is fairly easy with the injection of new skills and new understandings.
Sure.
And of course, I was born and raised in a family of entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. All my older brothers are entrepreneurs. So I was kind of nurtured in an entrepreneurial environment. So part of that was kind of natural. And the other thing that happened in 1979, 78, 79, if you remember, those were the years of high inflation and high unemployment, stagflation as we called it in those years. We had high unemployment, and I was a young engineer, and basically I couldn't get a job, which is not too different from what we have today.
Exactly.
So basically, I had just married and had to support my family. I was 24 years old. My wife was 21, and I had no practical skills. I had a lot of theoretical skills as an engineer. And I said, well, I'll make my own job. And I started a business writing business software.
Amazing. Now, I want to talk more about your business career, but before we leave the subject of Iran, let me just one more time ask you about your views about the current situation in Iran. Do you still have family there, by the way?
No, all my family, not only my immediate family, but my extended family have left Iran. I belong to a religious minority which is severely persecuted in Iran. We are members of the Baha'i faith. And basically it's what happened back after the Islamic Revolution conditions became much more severe for the Baha'is. And it culminated in my father, who was a elected officer of the Baha'i faith, being arrested and executed in January of 1982. So as a result of that, all family assets were confiscated, and anybody with my last name would be suspect and would be subject to potential harassment and persecution. So my immediate family and my cousins and my uncles, they all left the country. So today, basically, none of my immediate family is still in Iran. But of course, Iran is not only a land of my birth, but it's also the land where my faith started in. And so I have great interest in it, and my hopes and wishes for its future are very true. And so I follow up and keep up with what's going on in Iran.
And so to follow up on that point and to conclude our discussion about Iran, tell me about your views of what's happening in Iran today.
When the Islamic Revolution of Iran really was a democratic revolution. I mean, majority of the people wanted democracy, wanted freedom, wanted liberty. And that movement, which is no different than the current Green movement, was basically hijacked. Was hijacked by a group of theocrats who really hid their intentions and sided with the progressives to basically topple the regime, and then they maneuvered to get into a position of power. And we have today a theocracy in Iran instead of a democracy that was the original intent of the people who burst into the streets back in the 78-79 timeframe. So as a part of this partnership, the Iranian constitution has got a dichotomy in it. It has elements of power which is very Republican and very democratic, whereby you have a president who is elected, you have a Congress, we call it the Majlis, which is elected, and they have certain domains and powers. And then you have an unelected theocrats that really hold the power. At the pinnacle of that power structure is the supreme leader, and which at first was held by Khomeini, which was the father of the revolution, and now it's held by the current supreme leader, Khamenei. And these two power centers kind of are behind the Byzantine the form of the Iranian governance. Now, over time, these two forces have clashed, as you can possibly imagine. You have a democracy trying to function under a totalitarian theocracy and coexist with it. So the areas of friction are numerous and they're daily. That gradually is coming into a head. 2 years ago, people burst into the streets because they didn't trust the elections. They didn't trust the validity of the elections. And you remember,
sure.
it was in June of 2009, I believe, where we had 2-3 million people, mostly young people, in the streets protesting the results of the election. And that was severely suppressed. And we had a period of calm, so to speak. And now there seems to be a schism between the president and the supreme leader, and they're jockeying for power. Where it will all end, it's anyone's guess. But I can tell you this, that Iran's population, 60+% of Iranian population, 70+ million people live in Iran. More than 60% of them are under the age 30. These are people who are highly educated, very smart, very connected, through internet and social networking. They know what's going on in the rest of the world, and they cannot be held under the pressure and the yoke of totalitarian religious theocracy forever. So things will change internally within Iran. Exactly in what way or mode, I don't know. But this will not last.
So let me take you back now to your business career. You came to the United States, you obtained your education from Vanderbilt and University of California at Berkeley. You're an engineer. You find the job market to be very difficult. You gravitated toward the information technology business, a series of positions in different companies, and then you started a business called Paymax. And before you sold it a few years ago, it was one of the 10 largest payroll processing companies in the United States.
That's correct.
What an amazing success story.
Only in America.
Tell me how you did that. How did you do that?
Well, as I mentioned, in 1979, I started a software development company, writing business software, and we wrote accounting software. The name of the company was Access Data in those years, and I spent most of the decade of the 80s developing standard, enterprise general ledger and accounts payable and receivables and inventory management and payroll. So, and we were basically a software house, and our software was being distributed through the Hewlett-Packard family of mini computers, and we had installations in 30 states. And towards the end of that decade, I was kind of prompted by some of our licensees that managing this payroll software that we have licensed takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. Why don't we just send you the data and you process it and give us the end result? So I was kind of prompted to start a payroll service bureau, and I did. In January of 1990, I started a division of my software house called Paymax Division or Paymax Product, where we processed payroll for our clients. And that started to grow, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the growth of this new department of my software firm. And very soon I realized that that has potential for significant scale and growth. So over the next 3-4 years, I kind of changed, made a phase shift, made a paradigm shift in my business enterprise, kind of reduced the software licensing and focused my attention on the payroll processing and payroll outsourcing service. In 1994, I had my first round of capital from Clayton Associates.
Here in Nashville.
Here in Nashville, which, as you well know, Clayton McWhorter was the founder of it. And by the way, I did all of this from 1990, from 1979 all the way to 1994 without any capital. Everything I did was bootstrapped, credit cards and debt, and had no injection of capital. My first injection of capital was into Paymax in 1994, and then later on in 1997, and we used that capital to expand and scale. And at that time, internet was becoming, viable. So I saw a potential there, and I ported our payroll software onto the net back in 1999. Paymax was the second company in the country to provide a payroll service on the net. Today, everybody does it, but believe it or not, a small firm in Franklin, Tennessee was the second to pioneer that in the whole country. And that kind of put us on the map. By the turn of the decade, Paymax was over $10 million, one of the top 10 firms in the country. We had clients in all 50 states, and we were processing them all centrally from Franklin, Tennessee. And that continued on, and then ultimately in 2005, I found the opportunity to sell Paymax to another great firm, which was slightly bigger than us, called CompuPay. And the two businesses combined, and now CompuPay is the fourth or fifth largest payroll provider and the largest privately held payroll company in the country.
So help me understand the business model of your companies. I can go to Office Depot and buy off-the-shelf software for taxes. So why can I not buy off-the-shelf software to process payroll? Where do you add value that I couldn't add for myself?
You can. You easily can go and buy a software package as inexpensive as, I don't know, $1,000. But payroll is not just limited to printing checks and reports. That's just a very, very small part of payroll processing. There's a whole slew of other things that comes into play. For instance, once a payroll is processed, then there are taxes that needs to be deducted and sent to taxing authorities. Taxing authorities are not just the federal government, they're state government, local government. State of Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, these have hundreds, if not thousands, of taxing authorities. And depending on where you live, your taxes may be different. And these have all need to be deducted and sent properly to those taxing authorities. Otherwise, it will create, interest and penalties. So the tax filing portion of the payroll and the fund movement component of payroll processing is something that really prompts people to outsource their payroll. That's one. The other thing is there's a lot of paperwork and there's a lot of regulation that you have to keep up with. If you have a small enterprise with 5 employees or 50 or 500, the amount of paperwork is still the same, more or less. You still have to file the same returns, quarterlies and year ends, and you may be in more states and more locals, but basically there's a tremendous amount of paperwork involved. And by outsourcing, you basically get rid of all of this. And the other part of it is larger companies need bigger systems, more sophisticated payroll software, and some of them run into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. By outsourcing, you really convert a fixed cost and a fixed investment into a variable cost. So as your number of employees go up, your payroll service goes up. But if your number of employees go down, you dispose of a division or you downsize, your payroll service fees come down. That's another reason. And finally, payroll is now part and parcel of the entire human resource management system and the human capital management system, where you maintain all kinds of demographics, benefits, benefit administration, 401ks, Section 125s. There are a whole suite of additional services and benefits that all leverage the payroll data. And you couldn't have all of these links and all of these integrations with a $999 software that you may buy from Office Depot.
Well, it's an often overlooked and sometimes forgotten fact that I think about 60% of the businesses in America actually have fewer than 100 employees, if I remember my number correctly. And so I assume that would be your target market.
The number is even higher than that. There are roughly 5 to 6 million federal IDs active federal IDs in the U.S. that employ people. There's probably same number of federal IDs that are just sole proprietorships, and there are no employees involved. But the legal entities that have employees are the ones that interest me. And the number, depending on whose study you read, ranges between 5 to 6 million. Out of that, 98% hire less than 100 employees.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
So that's your target market, I presume.
Well, I mean, we technically take clients that have 1 employee up to 1,000 employees, but our focus is maybe 25 to 500. That's our focus. But we are capable of processing payrolls for people from 1 to 1,000, even above. But that's just a marketing segment that we have focused on in our current deployment.
So you sold Paymax
in 2005.
And it was a very successful business, and I presume that you and your investors, partners, were happy with that transaction.
We were very happy with that transaction.
And you were out of the market for a period of time, and now you've come back into the market and you formed a company called Innova. So tell us about that business and what you propose to do with Innova and why you decided to re-enter the market.
Sure. As you mentioned, in 2005, I sold Paymax to CompuPay, and I stayed with the combined entity for 2 years. Then in July of 2007, I left, and I was doing some investing and served on a number of boards, and I was busy. I finished a novel I was working on for a long time, and did all kinds of things I've always wanted to do and didn't have the time to do. And that period went on for about 2-3 years. Then in middle of last year, 2010, I was approached by a major private equity firm out of Texas called Austin Ventures to do some consulting work for them about doing a business plan or looking at the feasibility of doing a major new startup in the payroll space nationwide. And I was engaged in that work for about 6 months. And due to some personnel changes, they decided not to execute that plan. And then I had done all the planning. I kind of re-engaged in the market. And come January of this year, I said, let's do that myself. And throughout my years on the outside, I would hear from my friends, my colleagues, my business associates that a lot of complaints about the way payroll service was being developed and delivered. A lot of complaints, a lot of things that are not very pleasant to business owners, such as annual price increases when you're in the middle of a recession. I thought that there really is an opportunity to do a new entry into the market and do it right, leveraging my experience, and try to solve some of those wounds that exist in the market, and dissatisfaction and discontent that exist, and create an alternative. And so I started in January of this year and formed the capital, assembled the management team, some of them my former colleagues from Paymax, and the response has been overwhelming, both from the capital market and also the small business community and the mid-sized business community. Right now we have backlogs that take us all the way to the end of the year.
Well, congratulations on that. So it sounds like you failed at retirement.
There was an article with that headline. Yeah, that's
well,
correct.
Congratulations on your new venture. Now, tell me how you propose to compete with these very large companies, one larger than it once was because you sold your former business to it. So as the industry has consolidated and scaled up, I presume that means that the level of customer service perhaps has come down.
It's generally the case.
And that must create an opening for you.
That's correct. I mean, an analogy I often use is the analogy of a bowling ball versus a marble. If you have a bowling ball on this table and you just thump it, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you do the same action to the marble flies off the table. So when you have large players in any market, their greatest asset, which is their size, is simultaneously the greatest liability because they cannot be responsive. They become victims of their own procedures and victims of their own structure. And so they cannot be as responsive as a small entrant can. And that's the story of America. Smaller businesses come in and take market share from larger players because they can be agile, they can be flexible, they can solve customer problems. Case in point, all the major payroll service providers, almost without exception, raise their prices every year, regardless. You have 9.5% unemployment, not our problem. Here's your annual price increase. So I did a study of that, and I found out that it's not that material, especially for a small business. So I have proposed this and made it a cornerstone of our service agreement on our website, that we give all of our new customers a 3-year price lock. You would be amazed at the response. So a business owner who transfers their payroll to our service is assured 3-year fixed price. So this is a situation where, with a modest amount of investment, I can carve a niche and basically win market share. Now, I have articulated 10 of these things that I will just basically go and try to leverage to try to get market share. And this basically comes from experience and industry knowledge. Another area where we have an advantage is most of the players in the market have 2 different databases, one for human resources, one for payroll. And these 2 databases have to be synced up, linked up, periodically, every hour, either automatically or data needs to be pushed. But the platform that we have deployed, payroll and human resource, are in one database. There is no syncing. The minute you add an employee, you've added it to both functions, HR and payroll. In fact, there's only one employee record. So the whole idea of syncing goes away. This is another differentiator. And basically, when you want to gain market share, you have to articulate differentiations. And as I mentioned, we have been able to articulate 10 differentiators that would enable us to get market share. It's on our website, innovapayroll.com, that we said top 10 reasons why, you're better off with us, and it's all articulated there.
You must have some very interesting ideas about entrepreneurship, having been an entrepreneur now for a number of years and through various ventures successfully. What are we doing right in entrepreneurship in this country, and what should we do better?
Well, first of all, I mean, I've lived in this wonderful country for majority of my life, and I have come to realize that basically what has made America great economically is its environment for entrepreneurship. The fact that the barriers to entry are very low and has historically been very low. You can basically start with nothing and become a Bill Gates, and basically sky's the limit, which is not the case in most parts of the world. So we should never lose sight of that. The greatness of America is its capitalism and its entrepreneurial spirit. I'm fond of saying that the business of America is small business. Anybody, look at me. I mean, I was a student, foreign student. Before I even became a citizen, I was a resident, and I started a business. Later on, I became a citizen, and you know, have prospered by working hard in this environment. So we should never lose sight of that. That's our strength. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, you know, if currently we are trying to struggle out of a recession, I think that's an excellent time for creative minds and hardworking people who have a skill of some sort, have a hobby of some sort, to go and start businesses. You know, entrepreneurship is one person or two people with an idea and a vision, and you know, going out and trying to sell their skills to others. For a business enterprise to come into being, it requires three constituent elements. It needs people, it needs products and services, it needs capital. Now, a perfect business will have all three of these day one. I'm fortunate that with Innova Payroll, that is the case. Mm-hmm. I have the management team, I have capital, and I have products and services day one when we opened our door. But the fact of the matter is that any combination of the two is enough to start a business. You can have people and capital and start a business and go find products and services. You can have people and products and services, open your door and go search for capital. You can have capital and products and services and go out and find a management team. So any two of the three is sufficient to start a business. Overwhelming majority of small businesses is simply where people and products and services come together. Most of them don't have capital day one. They use, you know, their own savings and their own credit cards and their own, you know, second line of credit on their homes or whatever, aunts and uncles to give them money to get something off the ground. So basically, if you have the drive, the initiative, the wherewithal to start a business, there is not a better environment in the world to start businesses than the United States. Having said that, I see more and more over time barriers being erected by basically, you know, local, state, federal government. More and more regulations, more and more forms to fill out, more and more things to do, more and more mandates. So it's getting harder and harder to start businesses, and that's really something that we need to be watchful of, because we are eroding our greatest strength by creating barriers to entrepreneurship.
Well, to that point, we're in an era where daily we read the newspaper headlines about the lack of job growth in the United States. There's a great deal of anguish over that, a lot of debate about how to correct that. So if the president called Farsheed tomorrow and said, "I need your help," what advice would you give him?
That's a tall order. I mean, as I said, I would look at the regulatory environment, find out what are the barriers to starting businesses. That's one thing I would focus on. The other thing I would look at is to figure out a way where capital could become more available to small businesses. I mean, today, getting a small business loan from a bank is extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. It's extremely difficult. I give you a small anecdote. Innova Payroll is fortunate to have millions of dollars worth of capital, but we're brand new, okay? So we wanted to obtain a corporate credit card so that, you know, if you buy equipment or something, we don't use our personal credit cards and then get reimbursed. Just get a corporate credit card for our routine purchases of maybe a PC or some office supplies and things like that. So every credit card company we called, because we don't have a history or a track record, would not give us a $25,000 credit card. So we went to all the local banks, and we said, here's what we do. This is just for convenience sake. We will post a $25,000 CD as collateral in your bank, lock it up. Give us a credit card that's tied to that CD. So we will have a corporate credit card. Only one bank took us up on it and did it for us. And they said, we have no paperwork for it. We have to draft brand new paperwork. And they just did it out of background and history and respect for me. So that just gives you how complicated getting the smallest level of credit can become.
Sure.
It shouldn't be that way. And forget about going and trying to get a $100,000 line of credit backed by your receivables to fuel your business. They would want a second mortgage on your house. They would want your father-in-law to come and guarantee it, and it's just very, very complicated to get capital or debt capital.
We happen to be in a state, however, where our former governor, Phil Bredesen, had led a movement toward a very creative form of financing for young companies called the 10 Invesco funds. I think some of your funding may have come from one of the 10 Invesco funds. Tell us what that is and tell us how that works and how that might be a potential solution for some of these issues.
From what I understand, 10 Invesco is funded by certain tax credits that creates a pool of capital that's invested to create new businesses and new jobs for the state of Tennessee. And it's given to various private equity firms to manage. And I was fortunate that recently Nashville Capital Network, which is the manager of one of the 10 Invesco funds, showed interest in Innova Payroll, and after I made presentations, they agreed to invest $1 million in Innova Payroll on top of what I'd already raised. So this was a wonderful event, and we are very happy about it, and it just opens new doors for us so we can scale even more than what we originally planned.
Our time has flown by, and unfortunately we're almost out of time, but I don't want to end the program without hearing about your other career. As a novelist, you recently published Mushroom in the Sand.
Yes.
And I'm just amazed, Farsheed, because not only are you an engineer, a successful business executive, a successful entrepreneur, but you're also a novelist. How in the world did you find the time to write the book? And number two, tell us about the book and what it's about.
The book is a novel which basically occurs on the background for the novel is the Iranian nuclear ambitions, and it basically weaves three cultures of America, Iran, and Russia into a very interesting international spy thriller. But along the way, a lot of facts and a lot of historical and cultural and scientific backgrounds are conveyed to the reader. And I've been flattered by a lot of people who've read it, and they say it reads like a movie. So this was something that I did on my spare time. It was really a labor of love. I started it in 2001 or 2000. Yeah, I started. The idea came to me. I wrote the summary in 2001. I spent most of 2001 basically learning fiction writing, which is different from business writing. Mm-hmm. And then it took me 6 years to write it. I wrote it from 2002 to 2008. Then I actually produced it and edited it in 2009, and it was published. And it's been very rewarding. Now I'm working on another book, which is nonfiction. I think nonfiction is a little easier to write than fiction. I probably will not write another fiction.
And this is a real book, too, because it's available through Amazon.com.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure through bookstores, and so congratulations.
And also Kindle, you could download it.
Sure,
yeah.
ebooks,
yeah.
That's another whole subject. We'll have to come back and do that subject another day.
Yeah.
So Farsheed, I often end conversations with my friends by kidding them and saying, well, you're a great friend and a great American. But in your case, you really are a great American. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a great life and what a great story and what a great success.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. And if I can ever be of any assistance in what you do here at David Lipscomb's wonderful business school and the Entrepreneurship Center, I'll be glad to serve and assist in any way I can.
Thank you, Farsheed. My guest today has been Farsheed Fersowsi, who is the president and CEO of Innova Payroll Incorporated, a new business here in Nashville. Again, Farsheed, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.